Thank you very much, Art. Tony Masaccio with Flashpoint, 1490 WRE. This is probably going to be the most difficult show I've ever done in the 3 years I've been on this airwaves. My son Jesse committed suicide January 9th of this year. He had depression. He started with Crohn's disease in 2011 when he was in high school. Fortunately, he was taking oxycodone for pain. Went to Ohio State. He was a brilliant kid. 4.2 grade average in high school. His Crohn attack again started in November when he was in college. And due to a miscommunication at hospital that he was in with a colonoscopy, but he didn't do part 2 of the surgery, depression set in. And unfortunately, he took his life. I would love for you to, my audience and Art's audience, which is both of ours, our millions of listeners and the millions of listeners that I have across this country, from Las Vegas to Florida, to Boston, to Akron, to Youngstown, my friend Bill Fasone. I want you to take out a pen and a piece of paper right now, if you will. And I want you to write down these words, B-O-J-E, B-O-J-E, P-R-O-J-E-C-T. So BojeProject.com. And it's a little history of my son. There's a picture on there. My son was a brilliant artist. And it shows his mind of what my son went through while his depression occurred in the last few years. Unfortunately, the gut and brain, or fortunately, the gut and brain are connected to each other, and the gut is called the second brain. 90% of serotonin is produced in the gut. So the gut is related to the brain, which whatever we put in our bodies goes to the brain. And unfortunately, my son was not taking the right medicine. It's a very tough subject, suicide. I have someone in this audience, in this studio right now, who has a foundation called Alive on Purpose, LaToya Jones, who is the founder, who is in the shoes of depression and suicide. LaToya, thank you for being in the studio.
Thank you for having me.
When you did.
14 was the first ideation, which ideation means the thought of suicide. And the second attempt was 21.
So it's very interesting. I met you just recently after my son just passed away, which was probably within a month away. I was at one of the restaurants that I service. And you were sitting at the bar next to me. I was talking to my customer. And I asked what you did, and you told me that you were an advocate in suicide prevention. And I said, I know this girl. Yeah. I said, you were on Cleveland Magazine, one of the 50 most interesting people, and I told you that, right, because I have a subscription to Cleveland Magazine, and your story was so impressive that I never even met you, and how ironic this was that this happened just shortly that we now are talking about suicide. So I think there's a God, my Jesse, I don't know what it is, but we really have to talk about this because unfortunately there are more families in this country that have depression. Not only just depression, but mental illness and suicide thoughts than ever before. And the question is, why? You know, when I was growing up, it didn't seem like depression was, or suicide was in, the schools. Now you're seeing these schools, Chardon, 6 kids die, suicide. It's happening across the nation, not only because of the drug addiction, but what is it? And I talked about this a couple weeks ago where it is nutrition. It is that gut brain that whatever we go into our bodies obviously is reflecting on what we think. So tell me about your foundation.
So Alive on Purpose, and I actually started Alive on Purpose for my personal story and my personal experiences being that girl at the age of 14 who did not like her life. I didn't like where I was coming from. I didn't like who my parents were. I didn't like the story that they gave me. And it was my idea that living this life would be harder than exiting this life. And so at 14 years old, I thought about suicide more than I thought about living. And I realized as I got older and the thoughts continued with me that I wasn't alone. Suicide right now is the 10th cause of death in the United States. And so there's millions of people who have this same plight that we're talking about today every day. And I wanted to be on the solution of this problem. Not only did I want to heal myself, which I have done, tremendous work on, I wanted to also heal and be responsible for helping to heal the youth of our generation.
You go and talk to schools every week?
I do.
Every weekend, correct?
Every Wednesday.
And how many schools and students do you get to throughout the year?
Yeah, so in the 5 years we've been in existence, we've helped probably thousands of students. Currently, we have over 200 students right now enrolled in our programming across 4 campuses.
Obviously, this drug addiction is a problem across America where, again, when I grew up, we were smoking marijuana, which obviously marijuana is still prevalent in this country. It is the opioids, the heroin, the cocaine that is unfortunate, where my son also became that addictive person to even out or level his brain, if you will, while he was in that depression state. And obviously you're seeing this more and more with the kids that you're at. They're starting younger and younger. Am I correct?
Yes, they are.
So what is the answer?
I mean, I don't have the answer. I know for me, when I was younger, I wanted to know why. I think that was the number one question I have. Why am I experiencing, bad days? Why am I experiencing abandonment? Why am I experiencing foster care? Why am I experiencing a mother addicted to crack cocaine? Why am I experiencing a father not in my house? I'm only 14. And for me, I wanted to be a doctor when I was younger. And I had it all planned out with my Barbie and Ken dolls. I really wanted to be somebody that was great. I didn't sign up for the story that I had been given. And for a lot of our young people, they have these pressures of life that are on them, and they didn't sign up for those pressures. They have to endure them, but they didn't sign up for them. And I think the first answer, what I try to provide every day, is trying to understand the story and the plight and the pressure that each of these young people have. And I think that's where we start. I think we can't heal until we hear. And I think once we hear, we can help.
And again, you talk about broken families, where my son came from a 2-parent family. He was a brilliant, intelligent kid. I mean, he went through high school with no depression. Again, it started where that Crohn's occurred. And it also is in this bullying, which is happening, where suicide is obviously becoming more prevalent in the school system,
Right.
which is unfortunate.
Right.
What do we do about the bullying, though, for these school systems? And again, I've talked to kids where I do a program with Edwins, and I don't know if you're familiar with them. You are familiar with them. I see you shaking your head. Where they take in convicts, and they take in people who have misdemeanors and felonies, and they teach them the hospitality industry. And a lot of these adults that are going through this program have all had problems within their families, and that's a problem. And I'm not just saying that the two people in the family are the answer, because again, my son was in a situation where suicide still occurred. I just don't know what to say on this, and the reason why is because my son was on lithium, which were you on any drugs for your? Not. How did you not? Were you on any illegal drugs?
I was not. No, it wasn't.
Okay.
I didn't. I took a different path in my healing process. I did do counseling, and I do actively believe in counselors and the method of therapy. I guess I was one of the ones that didn't get the diagnosis that needed medicine. And I think things are different now than they were, maybe 20 or so years ago. And I'm not that, older in age, but I believe that, when we were in school, I was in school, I'm 34, so 20-something years ago, I had an escape. When school was out and the issues of school were done, I could go home and I can, close my door and I can escape in my bed. Now the young people of this generation don't have escapes. Their phones travel with them, social media travels with them, Instagram, Snapchat, all these devices that they use travel with them, and so they can't leave problems anywhere. And so they are looking to external mechanisms to try to cope with the things they're dealing with today, right? They're looking to drugs, they're looking to alcohol, they're looking to all these different things to try to suppress the emotions and the feelings and everything that they're feeling. And I think today it's a lot worse than what it was before.
You're listening to the Art McCoy University Radio Show, the University of Common Sense. Suicide is on the increase, and we want to help put it on the decrease. 216-578-1490.
He had anger. So we would actually call the police, and they would come to our home. And he was taken away a few times. He had to go to the hospital. The last time that we had called in, they asked and he was smart. So he was, in his rage, they asked him 3 questions. What was today? What was the president's name? And I believe it was the year. And again, it was ridiculous what they do right now if there is suicide attempts, where they should be able. The problem is the system is not right when it comes to hospitalization or hospitalizing those who are in the suicide act. Where do you go from there? And again, I really want to know, as again, we're not professionals, and I'm not a doctor, and I don't play one on the radio when it comes to suicide. But it's unfortunate to have that when it comes to hospitalizing these.
All right, you're welcome to chime in on the conversation.
Black House Sound, and I'm under the impression that y'all talking about suicide and depression.
Yes, you
Is
are.
that true?
Yes, you are.
Yes.
All right. Well, I just wanted to call in and just let people know I work at a high school, Shaw High. There's Joseph Motley Jr., the founder of Black House Sound. I see depression every day on a daily basis, and the best thing I think can help with depression is people talk about their problems with folks instead of holding all their problems in, and instead of feeling like people will turn their back if they tell the issues that they're going through. And I also think social media, since we all hiding behind a computer most of the time, when we express ourselves, I think that take away from people really connecting, and that's what makes depression so realistic how it is nowadays with all the murders and stuff like
What I
that.
want to say is that it's hard to deal with that subject. It is, and depression especially, and I would wonder how, especially looking at the program Alive on Purpose, you can be dealing with something and not even realize what you're dealing with. I'll use myself as an example and say that I lost my daughter. She passed when I was at the age of 16, and I self-medicated through alcohol and a lot of different things like that. It was after I began to come down off of alcohol and everything else, there was a period that for around 7 to 8 years, the one thing that I always blame myself on a daily basis is that I felt I was a coward because I couldn't kill myself.
Yep.
And that's all I can say on that. Right.
Porter, and again, the 3 of us right here, it's not a good club to bury a child. There's no 2 ways about it. And there's thousands of people that are listening to us right now that have depression, or they have, a child that died, or a parent or a relative, a co-worker, which depression it's a hidden disease. We can't see people that have, every other disease, whether it be heart or lung or cancer, it's treated. The brain, unfortunately, they test. So they have so many different pills, whether it be lithium or Prozac. It's kind of like a guinea pig, if you will, because every brain is different. The body, you go to a cardiologist, it's like clockwork. They know exactly what they're doing. With the brain, although it's an organ, it's a very difficult organ to fix, which is unfortunate. And you had talked about your daughter, where, was she depressed as a kid? Or was there a depression that you saw earlier in life?
No, she wasn't depressed as a child. she was a very happy child, very happy-go-lucky child. But as things progressed in her life, at some point she became suicidal. And there were signs of suicide, but by me overlooking those issues and not really dealing with I was a crime fighter, not a suicide fighter.
Absolutely.
So I didn't realize the gravity of it, and when I realized it was the death of my daughter. And it's ironic as I stand here, because I heard the testimony of the young lady next to me, such a beautiful, glamorous, cool young lady, to hear her story of depression and what she went through. I know there's so many that's listening to the program right now that feel the same way that we do and she do. I'd just like to hear more of her testimony.
Yeah, and there's help out there. And like you had said, there is help out there, and you cannot give up on your child, your parent, whoever that loved one is that does have depression. Latoya, any other thoughts on this? Obviously, first of all, say the name of your foundation and how people can contribute to it.
It's Alive on Purpose, and we can be found online on all social media platforms by the same name, Alive on Purpose. I think for me, and with working with the girls and even my personal testimony, a lot of people wait until it is too late. In suicide treatment, there are 3 different stages. There's low risk, there's moderate risk, and then there's high risk. And typically in your high risk cases, you see more of the diagnosis and the psychiatric plans. But then there's a whole lot of people, in the millions or thousands, who are in the low and moderate. It's the people who, something doesn't feel right. The day doesn't go as normal as it should. The atmosphere around me doesn't feel normal, but I ignore it. I'm having a bad day. Maybe somebody did pass away in my family, but I'm just going to deal with it. And it's that compression of things over and over and over again over time that are not dealt with, that begin to compound upon itself. And eventually you have something that's combustible. And either we're going to deal with it then, or it becomes too big of a weight to carry and we don't deal with it at all. And I think in my life, it was that not having the strategies, not having the tools, not having the answers. And year 1, year 2, age 10, age 12, age 21 when my mother died of a cocaine overdose, age 24 when my house went into foreclosure, age 25 when I got laid off from my job and I had to go live with my cousin, leaving my brand new house that I just bought. These are things that happen over and over again to millions of people, and we just let it build and build and build, and we never deal with it. And so, as the listeners are listening, we have to deal. But what does that look like?
Yeah, and you overcame.
Yeah.
That's the nice part about it. As I said, a lot of people can overcome, and that suicide occurs, which is unfortunate.
All right, 216-578. Who's on the phone line? Talk to us. Yes, hello. Yes, hello there.
Hi, my name is Betty Ruth Shear. Tony, I really
Hi.
want to express to you my greatest, deepest sympathy. As you know, my family never gave up on me when I was suffering with being bipolar for 40 years with depression and manic states. And I just want to say to you, I'm really sorry, but I want to say that you never gave up on your son, and that the people that are listening should never give up on their loved ones. My family never gave up on me, and I became successful, and I take my medicine every day. I accept the fact that I have a mental illness, and I deal with it.
And Betty, thank you for calling. Actually, you're a friend of mine, and you're obviously my friend Howard is your brother, who you guys have 2 siblings in your family that had bipolar, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and you became successful. You became an accountant at Cleveland Clinic. And you got a different story. As a matter of fact, Betty, will you do me a favor? I know that you have a book out. Will you give it a plug real quick? And I presume suicide was in your brain many times?
I actually took an overdose once. I was trying to reach for the heavens, and I overdosed. I took a overdose of lithium. I got my stomach pumped, and they took me and put me in a hospital at the time. And I went through ECT treatments, and it all came out to the best.
You again, caller. And you know what? And on that caller's point, I really believe that communication is the key here, where this social media has unfortunately changed our lives and changed our children's lives because they can't talk anymore. They're actually doing Instagram and Facebook. They can't even, I was in high school and I was doing great with just public speaking. Now these kids can't even get up and talk, Art, where it's an unfortunate situation.
Absolutely.
Let me say something right quick. I don't want to get pessimistic, but obviously I spoke on the technology addiction last week, and I think with her program is excellent, but I see this issue getting worse, unfortunately, over the years as technology gets more interactive, as it gets better, as it sinks into our life. Now, I agree with what everyone is saying about the social media and the technology, but we have to look at the past and how this is not, like, things have evolved into how it is today. Like, we used to talk to our neighbors. We used to borrow sugar. We used to, even in my generation, and I'm not even that old. So things like the microwave, whereas before everyone had to eat dinner together. You know what I mean? The microwave, where now, we'll go play outside. You don't have to eat with us.
We're in an instant
Warm your
society,
food up.
Sam. You're right. We
So
are in an instant
everything,
society.
as it gets more faster, we compensate for our lack of personal relationships
I agree.
with technology.
We are
So
in a-
I think it's key to really look at the past and, okay, well, we didn't just get social media. We had the internet before social media. We had microwaves. Before that, maybe we had cars. Maybe we walked together as a family to school and different things like that. So I think that's important.
And Sam, you're the computer guy. Remember
Yeah.
when we had dial-up? It took
I
you
went,
5
I went
minutes.
to I
It
went
took
to
you
Ohio
5
State for computer science, so I know.
It took you 5
Yeah.
minutes to get dial-up. Now we can't even wait when our
Yeah.
computer opens up in 3 seconds. So I
But-
agree with you.
and
But
I
the
think-
unfortunate part is we became a disposable instant society.
Yeah.
And that is a problem. We need everything quickly, and we're road rage, whatever. We're too fast now. And I understand that. That's
And one more
unfortunate.
thing, I think it comes down to value.
There's
And
no
it comes
two ways
down
about
to
that.
status. Really, if you look at, and I'm not overly religious, but religion is basically here, the benefit of it is you don't get trapped into the material world. The moment you get trapped into the material world, you have expectations. You're not in control of expectations, how successful you're going to be in life. You don't have any control over that. So you want to, the balance will be, you want to put 100% in everything that you do and not be attached to the results. So the moment that you're attached to the results are out of your control. If it's out of your control, it's going to control your emotions, so to speak.
Sam, and I always love your views. That's why I love coming in this show, and Art knows I call it the white perspective when I'm in here, right, Art?
Listen, talking about the white perspective, black perspective, we started out the show with two great, a different point of views. All right, you being Italian, right?
Correct. Absolutely.
And I being black, right?
Absolutely.
Listen, during my era, suicide was taboo. And I don't know how, and I think that's slowly changing, but I don't think it's changing fast enough. So many blacks still consider it taboo, but as a matter of fact, the black suicide rate for young people on up is rising greatly.
70%, Art.
70%.
It's risen 70% in the black community.
All right.
And you got to ask that question. Why?
All right.
Why? And again, like you had said, and when I was in high school, college, it was taboo. For
In the
suicide.
Italian community also?
Absolutely.
All right. Okay, so we're bringing this full circle to this young lady here.
So-
How's it now?
Yep. So again, real quick before you answer that,
go ahead.
Latoya, so whether it be white, black,
Yes.
red, the suicide rate is still here. The drug addiction is higher. Art, You and I, we grew up, there was marijuana. You were obviously in Vietnam. There were drugs in Vietnam. There was heroin in both the streets of white and black in the 70s and 80s. Now it is higher than ever. The rise of these opioids, of these kids taking heroin, overdosing, is at an all-time high. That depression, of course, is key within that aspect of these kids becoming addicted.
Yes, yes, I understand clearly. Yes.
If we can go back a little bit to the social media, and I want to answer both questions at the same time. There is something called dopamine. Dopamine is the happy drug that's in your body. And dopamine is released when you do things like complete a task, or when you work out, or when you double tap on social media. And what's happening is what we used to do back in the day, like go outside and play with our friends, or sit at the table with our family, and we would get dopamine because they would compliment us and we would have great conversations. That now same scenario is being replaced by social media. And so when we say, let's just take away social media and our kids will be okay, we can't. Because they're addicted to social media in the same way that people are addicted to drugs, opioids, alcohol.
Yeah.
It's an addiction.
Electronic heroin, that's what we were speaking on last week.
And so to suppress depression, to make depression feel less of the weight, I now have to find a way to get dopamine in my body. So there's a generation of young people that are addicted to social media. As far as our African Americans, what I'm seeing in the school systems, I agree completely with Art. It is taboo in the African American community, and the reason being is because we believe that religion
Yes, ma'am.
will replace the thoughts of suicide. We believe that joy comes in the morning. We believe that Jesus will fix it. We believe that if you say something, you're weak. If you tell somebody, you're not strong. And those mandates, those principles have been spread across the African American generation. So we find it harder to get them to go to counseling. We find it harder to get them to speak up, to even say that there's a problem, because we're taught in that culture to just deal with it and fix it yourself. I think other cultures have been more exposed to solutions than the African Americans, maybe from a financial standpoint or a resource standpoint, maybe from a medical standpoint. Whatever the reason is, I think there is a gap in trying to make sure that what you said, Tony, all cultures recognize that suicide is definitely an issue, and that this is something we're talking about not just in one community or another, but across the board.
You know, and you talked about religion. You brought up the subject on religion, where in religion, in a Catholic religion, if you commit suicide, you don't go to heaven.
That's a whole nother thing,
And
right?
that's a whole nother thing. But now the Catholic religion, if there is suicide, they will still bury you. They will still put you through church. You'll still get the complete burial, if you will, whether it be a murder or a death.
I knew about murder and homicide, but I didn't know about suicide. This was new to me. And all of a sudden, my research told me that suicide was more prevalent than homicide. Lord, what a wake-up lesson that I learned about suicide and
It means
depression.
exactly what it says. We're here. You're alive.
Right.
You're here for a reason. There's a
Right.
purpose inside of you, and you know, if you dare to live it out, if you dare to hold on, if you dare to have hope, there's something on the other side of all that, and it's not a mistake that you're here. Nothing is coincidence. You know, it took that mother, it took that father to make exactly who you were, and you're alive on purpose.
So if you remember, even if you're depressed, even if you're down, if you remember that you are alive on purpose and you're able to just hold on, help is on the way. Is that right?
It is.
And where can that help come from?
A lot of places, but for me, it can come from Alive on Purpose. You can reach us in so many ways. You can call, first of all, I want to put this out there, you can call the National Suicide Hotline if you have any issues or anything that you want to talk about. That's 1-800-273-8255. Again, that national number is 1-800-273-8255. But our telephone number for Alive on Purpose is 216-285-0267.
Say that phone number one more time slowly.
1-216-285-0267.
And so if there's depression or they need help, you all can help them at Alive on Purpose.
So we actually only help young people between the ages of 13 and 17 here in Northeast Ohio. So if you guys are here in the area, we definitely can help you directly. But again, that national number can help anyone across the world.
Latoya, is there a test for suicide or depression that you can give children, adults, teenagers? No. There's no
suicide test. There are tests for treating the brain, treating various things as far as complications that you may see. There is actually a study, it's a TED Talk on YouTube, that talks about the correlation between anger and some disconnects in frequency things. Of course, I'm not a doctor, but some frequency things that may be happening in the brain. And that TED Talk representative talks about how he had a young person in his life that was experiencing just aggressive anger. And it came to be that he had a cyst on a portion of his brain. And so sometimes things are going on in our brains that are affecting our moods, they're affecting our talk, our communication, the way we act, the way we respond, the way we treat people. And again, we think we can just push it off. Sometimes we actually have to make an appointment and make sure that everything up there is functioning accordingly.
You know, and Art, we had talked about this a few weeks ago about nutrition, and I know that Sam even said about sugar, where the kids today are not getting the nutrition that we once got, or our generation before us got, which is also affects the brain. So again, like I started before on this beginning of the show, it's that gut brain. Whatever we goes into our body goes to our brain.
Yes,
whether it be an aspirin or a Viagra.
Yes, 216-578-1490. Who's on the line?
I'd like to make a statement here. Now, you know, parents are really they're involved in a way as far as when that child come into the world, the doctors, they really probably have awareness of a lot of personal issues. Now, as the child gets older, parents have awareness. You know, a lot of times in families, they keep secrets, I think. I read a lot, and, you know, I pick up a lot through other people talking about their children. Now, just like the young lady that was on your program, I noticed she said her mother was on drugs, right? Now, it's sad that her mother was on drugs, but along the way, it probably was a lot of secrets along the way, because it's a lot of young kids walking around, and they have addiction as far as behavior problems. Now, that's coming about through family, schools, teachers. They can recognize a lot of things, too, because I'm a teacher assistant. I see a lot through younger women and men. Other words, they're teenagers, but still, they look like adults, and likely they are if they're going through behavior problems. Now, a lot of this stuff is through their thoughts. If the parent is carrying a certain way of being in that household, likely that child is seeing it, and they likely is keeping a secret. And a lot of this stuff, as far as suicide, is really teaching what they see and they don't tell.
All right.
And they must
so
get the spiritual way through someone in their environment, not the idea of just going to church every day. People that they can pick up that has that spiritual way, and this is how it is out here, because the behavior is very bad.
Yes, ma'am. I want Latoya Jones to answer that.
See, you know what? She brought up something interesting. When my mother died of a cocaine overdose. My mother started using cocaine when she was 13 years old. And the funny, but I guess interesting part is, and I use that loosely, I didn't know my mother died from a cocaine overdose until maybe 4 or 5 years after she passed away. And so I had lived, you know, until the age of 25 or 26 without knowing how my mother died. They told me that she had a toothache, and they told me the toothache seeped into her liver, and she ended up having a liver failure. And of course, being that I don't know medicine, I accepted it, but it hurt. And I found out when I was getting custody of my little brother. It was on the paperwork, and my grandmother told me because she thought I would find out anyway. And that was just one of the many secrets that was in my family. And if you guys remember when I first started talking, I said, I just wanted to know why.
Sure.
That was my only question. If someone had set me down and helped me understand why was my mother addicted, I later found out that she was addicted because she too felt like, you know, she was alienated in her own family. She too had had issues of molestation and rape. She too had felt like no one loved her. And if I had known that, maybe it would have helped me understand the pain that I had felt. And I had to carry that pain for 21, 22 years before someone explained, hey, let me tell you about your mom's story. So that caller was so spot on, and I think it's so important for us to talk as families And I don't think we do that. I don't think we sit down and say, hey, this is what I went through, and this is why you're dealing with, you mentioned it, Tony, generational things. This is why this issue is being passed down. This is why poverty is still in our family. And I think if we become more honest about what's going on, then we could be better.
You know, and that caller also had an interesting point that when it comes to addiction, you have a 75% chance of an offspring becoming addicted if someone above you has an addiction, which unfortunately my mother was an alcoholic. My wife's side of the family had alcoholism in there. My brother was a drug addict. So that addiction is and again, I hate to say this, but that addiction is the toughest part of our society right now, where I think this depression is also at I don't know what the percentage is, but unfortunately, that is what's happening with these kids nowadays doing drugs. So, did you have an addiction at all? I had asked you, did you experiment? No? Yes?
With other things, but not with...
Well, not with illegal drugs.
Not with illegal drugs.
But you drink. You still drink.
I mean, I had there's other addictions other than drugs, and I don't know how many of your listeners experience these, but there's approval addictions. There's sexual addictions.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's other things than just picking up an unknown substance. So people are all over the world are addicted to something.
Sure,
So
absolutely.
I can to that point say yes.
So where's the future with the Live on Purpose?
I hope it's, I hope it's helping more children. I really am just blessed to be able to see young people getting better. And like I said, we deal with the moderate to low risk cases, but to even know that those cases may not turn out to be suicides is such a blessing. And I just hope that, my story will inspire people. I've always said if people think about suicide, I want them to see my face and choose not to. Because I honestly, I believe that's why I was created. I believe that's why I survived. I believe that's why God still puts his hand on me. I believe that's why I'm here, is to help another person live. So just more life, I guess,
So I think it's the same reason why I'm here, Latoya.
Yeah.
How I met you, as I had said at the beginning of the show, is so ironic that my son had just passed away 2 months ago, and here I met you, and of course it's all based on suicide. So again, I just want you to look up BOJEPROJECT.com, BojeeProject.com. That was my son's nickname, Boje. And I got to tell you, he was a brilliant kid. I loved him.
Hey, I got a quick question. What road for the young lady here, and I think this is more of a reason people in Cleveland should check her out. We have the least sunniest days in the year. And I know a couple weeks ago, I wasn't depressed, but I was definitely down that, if you remember, it was like the sun wasn't out for like 5 days. What role do you feel that nature plays, or just being out at the beach or the lake, that could help people?
Yeah, I'm definitely not a meteorologist, but I do believe that, sun brings joy, and I think the absence thereof brings darkness.
Tony, we're going to take this. You finished?
Yes.
Tony, we're going to take this quick call. Who's on the line? Talk to me.
Yes, I like to share a thought with the person that has that program. The young girl says she has a program.
Uh-huh.
Well, if she just tells those young people, cast out the bad thoughts, because likely younger people are carrying some bad thoughts. And sometimes, if you can reach that person, and likely she can reach some of the children in her group or adults or whatever. She said 18, so those are adults in my way of thinking. Now, the thoughts of these young people, they need to talk it out with their parents. What they do, they go to school and they talk with these bad behavior kids, and I see them. I would like to talk to them, but I'm really scared of them because I see what they do. And I see how they speak bad language. Now, the teachers know all of this, but they don't want to get involved. Just like young ones are walking around today, a lot of them are prostitutes.
Listen.
All this. They need to go to somebody and explain why they're doing it. Just don't keep doing it. There's other things that they might be doing too. They must speak out. Get those bad thoughts off their mind. God can do it.
Listen, ma'am.
Get those thoughts out of their mind, because you're going to always have good and bad. But they must get those bad thoughts off their mind.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks for calling, caller.
All right.
Thanks for
Thank you
calling.
for your phone call. I'm back up against the news.
Real quick, let me
Go
just
ahead, you got
mention this.
time.
My friend Lori Vick from Fox 8 just texted me. Her husband actually committed suicide about 13 years ago. She has an organization called lifeat.org walk. It will be at April 22nd at 6 p.m. at the Metro Park Zoo. Again, lifeat.org walk, April 22nd, 6 p.m. at Metro Park Zoo. Thank you again, Lori. I really appreciate this.
Lori Vick, what
Lori
happened?
Vick from Fox 8.
All right.
Her husband actually committed suicide 13 years ago. She also had become a very large advocate in suicide. She was with NAMI at one point, and now she's with Life Act.
Tony, I'd love to give, I'm going to call her Denise this time. Tony, I'd love to give Denise the last word, if it's all right with you.
Absolutely.
You take your time.
Again, suicide is such a big topic. It's one that we never really can fully comprehend. It's one that, has shaken up houses, has brought tears to households, and has made people question, why they even exist. I think the number one theme of this show is to seek help. Is to call on people who have your best interests, who believe in you, who are there for you, who love you, to help you through the process, because it is indeed a process. And I must say that suicide is never the answer, that you're here for a reason, that you're alive on purpose, and that your story can definitely save somebody else's life if you're brave enough, courageous enough, strong enough, bold enough